of this deal? How impactful do you think this could be for the Suns?
I mean, I wasn't expecting it really, but I think it's impactful for the Suns. I think they just want to. It seems like they just want to take that next step and at least become a playoff team in the West at the very least. Kind of almost like what OKC did last year. I would, get into the playoffs, so you can say that franchise is taking a turn for the better. And I think obviously Chris Paul, when you look at what the Suns did, especially in the bubble, going undefeated, they're a team that seems like they're ready. So adding Paul should get them into the playoffs. I just worry a little bit about Chris Paul, and I know Monty Williams is a great coach, but he's still a young coach. I just wonder, I just hope that they mesh. That's the only thing. That's the only negative I could see if they start butting heads. Chris Paul thinks he knows more than Monty Williams. He thinks he knows more than every coach probably. So I would just worry about that. But on the court, I think it'll get them to the playoffs.
Yeah, it should. It seems like it's this kind of culture-shifting move for them, right, to try to get in the playoffs. It's not like they're going to be a championship contender. At least I don't think most people think so. But you do feel like it could shift the culture. But, Brian, you wrote about the fact that there has to be a more to this. And it kind of goes to the point that Murph makes too, right? We can see some help in terms of him developing Booker, taking the ball out of Booker's hands, also making Ayton a better player in the pick and roll. But Ayton's kind of that player we're waiting to see. Chris Paul's an all-star. Devin Booker's been an all-star. But DeAndre Ayton's got to take that next step as a former number one overall pick. Do you think this will help his development? Do you see this as a positive for DeAndre Ayton?
This has to be the best case scenario for him in terms of the development of a young center. I think with Chris Paul, we can all admit, as much as we love Chris Paul up here, and he's one of the best point guards ever, we were surprised at how good he was last year to some degree, right? We have to kind of acknowledge that. So at some point, this is going to be a 16th year. He's going to be 36. If he isn't 36 already, I think he's going to be 36 next year. The other shoe has to fall. We have to see if this is something that's going to continue. Now, luckily, he doesn't need to do what he did last year necessarily on this team. Maybe he can become more of a 15-point, 8 or 9 assist guy or whatever the case may be, but the key is to stay healthy. I think that if he's your third leading scorer, that's probably ideal. DeAndre Ayton averaged 18 and 11 last year, and while it's an 18 and 11 that didn't quite feel like an 18 and 11, I think that Chris Paul can sort of, make that easier transition for him to being the center that we think he could. Because look, this is a first overall pick from a couple years ago, and this is what I was talking about. First overall pick from a couple years ago. He's going to be 22 the entire season up until July, but they probably won't even play until July. But he's going to be He's going to be 22 this whole year. And it's this is somebody who can really develop and take that next step. So you got to try and get the most out of him, because if that happens, you're talking about a little bit of a big three situation where you have 3 all-star caliber dudes. And in the Western Conference, that is opening up a little bit, because we don't know how the Lakers are going to look, although we know that they're going to be contenders. We definitely don't know how the Clippers are going to look. Houston's about to blow it up. And when you go on down the line, it's hey, Phoenix matches up favorably with Denver maybe, or some of these other teams if they could get DeAndre Ayton to reach that next level.
Shall be interesting. You talked about Houston blowing it up. It seems like there's a problem down there in Houston. We talked about this in a previous podcast. Westbrook and Harden not sort of being in the direction or not being in alignment with what the team is doing. And I think a lot of that has to do with their owner, Tillman Fertitta, not wanting to spend money. But now there are reports that James Harden definitely wants to be traded. Westbrook wants to be traded. And particularly Harden, a lot of rumors about him coming to Brooklyn. Now, I told you guys this, and I've spoken with some people close to the Nets who say, yes, there have been talks. Nothing obviously is imminent, but they have been talking about it. And one person told me they think it's going to happen. I think
it might happen by the time this podcast is
up. It's possible, but it might happen by the time this podcast is up. I think the biggest question that a lot of the critics of this, including myself, have said is, well, how is this going to work? You have 3 top scorers. One who's very efficient in KD, and we still don't know what KD is going to be like coming back. And then Harden, particularly in Kyrie, both, if they're on the team, need the ball. You can't have all these balls. There's not only one ball to go around. Murph, what do you think about Harden as a fit in Brooklyn? Do you like that? Yay or nay?
I don't know. I don't think it fits. But if they can get him, they're going to do it. This is, and as a person who's living in New York in the media, I don't mind it. It's good. It'll be a whole bunch of stories to write about it, whether they fit or not. So, it sounds like it's going to happen. All the right people who need to be talking about it are talking about it when things like this are imminent. So I believe it. And like I said, I don't think it really fits basketball wise. And I mean, Kevin Durant's really gonna have to prove himself. If Kevin Durant can make this work, he might get the credit. He's so, long won it. You know what I mean?
I don't know if he will though, because I think people will still probably come out and say, "Oh, but you had James Harden and Kyrie Irving." You know what I mean?
Right. But I just feel like chemistry wise, it's so crazy, and he would be the one who would have to pull it all together and be the leader. Now, can he do that? I don't know, but if he did it, I think he would get credit.
I mean, he would have to be the one because I don't see the other two dudes doing it. And there's also a lot of pressure. Another issue I have with this, and I'll get to this, Brian, there's a lot of pressure on Nash, if this goes down, to manage all these superstars and egos and everybody wanting the ball. And
D'Antoni there too.
And D'Antoni there too.
I thought him and D'Antoni didn't really not that they didn't get
along. Who, Harden and D'Antoni?
I didn't know that they liked each other like this, where they're willing to do it again.
I mean, he's not the head coach anymore. I mean, that's for one. And number two, even if they didn't like each other, maybe that just speaks to how bad Harden wants to get out of Houston. Right? I'm going to go back even if I don't like this guy.
You know what I want if I'm Houston though, because I was looking at the numbers and looking through. Okay, how could this trade actually happen, right? And you're talking about Spencer Dinwiddie's obviously in that deal. He has 1 year left, 11-ish million. Karis LeVert's gone. Jared Allen's the third piece. And then I was going to say Zane Musa is one of the other guys you could throw in there, but he's already gone, clearly for a reason. It has to be Nicholas Claxton. If I'm Houston, I'm like, who's the young player from the Nets that I think can be something? It's Claxton, easily. And it's like Net fans aren't going to want to hear that because of like the guys they're giving up for that trade. And Net fans don't really like Harden, but obviously they didn't like Kyrie either, and they're going to warm up to him. They didn't like Durant either. They're going to warm up to him. Like, so it is what it is. Like, it's not just Nets fans, but this is what fans do when you don't like a guy and he's on your team. Well, most fans, not all fans. Because I'll tell you right now, Trevor Bauer signs with the Mets. I don't give a fuck. Like, I'm like, I can't fuck with Trevor Bauer. Like, that's just me. But James Harden, you're talking about everybody's unloaded there, and then you're talking about Kyrie, Kevin Durant, James Harden, DeAndre Jordan's your center. I mean, we'll see. And then whoever the other starter honestly doesn't matter. It might be Karooks or somebody like that. I don't know what you're gonna do with your bench. I just don't.
Harris, maybe.
When you have too much talent, I just feel like it doesn't work. I feel like we see it in college basketball all the time, and we've seen it in the NBA. The Clippers were the most talented team in the NBA last year, and we saw what happened with them. Duke had Cam Reddish and R.J. Barrett and Zion Williamson, and they lost in the second round, or not second round, the Elite Eight of the NCAA tournament or whatever it was. So, like, this happens all the time.
Yeah, I think, and to put a bow on this, I think the thing is that you can't think you could just put three superstars, if you want to call all of them that, together and think that it's just going to work. It has to be three superstars that have the right fit. Like when Bosh and Wade and LeBron came together, there never was a time in my mind where I was like, this isn't going to work. They all were pretty good defensively. I was like, it's just about figuring the other pieces around it. This is not one. There's two guys that are not good defensively in that situation and dominate the ball. Yeah. And I just see, Brian's used this word to me off us talking on the show. It's like, I see this being a disaster. And I know Nets fans don't want to hear that, and they're so happy to be relevant that they would have three stars in here, and I understand the excitement in that because they are the Nets, no disrespect, but it is about fit, and that stuff matters, and I don't think this isn't playing 2K, okay? You're not just going to be mashing people up and putting them together, and it's going to work.
It's going to be one way or the other. It's either going to be a disaster or it's going to be like like multiple championships or whatever the case may be. I feel like there's going to be no in between. And by the way, the elephant in the room, Kyrie Irving, injuries, Kevin Durant coming back from a big injury, and James Harden He's taken a lot of contact through his career. We don't know when that body's going to start breaking down. I don't think it'll be soon, but like these are just things that you have to. I don't think this is quite Kevin Garnett, Paul Pierce, and who was the third guy on that team?
Ray Allen.
Ray Allen.
No.
No. When they were at the Nets.
Oh.
Kevin Garnett, Paul Pierce,
Darren
Jason
Williams?
Terry?
Oh, Jason Terry, you talking about came in the trade?
Yeah.
Jason
All
Terry
right,
was in the
ignore
trade.
that. So
Yeah.
I don't think this is the Nets Celtics trade. I felt like the third player was better, but it was just Jason Terry. No
No, it was
disrespect, 'cause
just
I really
Jason.
like Jason Terry. But at that point, but I feel like I don't feel like this is that necessarily in terms of because those guys were a little bit older, but it could become that. We don't know.
Who knows? It's gonna be interesting, but that could be on the horizon.
And you got two of the guys not known as team players. Let's be honest about it. They could prove us wrong, and but that's what they'd have to do because on the face of it, the last few years, Kyrie and Harden have not been the guys you look to as like possible glue guys or guys that bring teams together. So I don't know. If you're talking about championships or disaster, I think disaster. It's closer to disaster right now.
Yeah, and by the way, and the last thing on this, the East is still really good. Like Boston, Miami, Philly is a wild card. We don't quite know what they're going to be. They're going to be relevant. Milwaukee, I would probably take Indiana off that list at this point. And there's another team I'm missing.
Toronto, depending on what they do.
Yeah, Toronto, depending on what they do. Even if they don't bring back Fred VanVleet, I feel like they're going to do something, right? But you're talking about like these are teams where, yes, the Nets will have the most top-end talent, but a lot of these teams will be bringing back a lot of the same dudes. And that chemistry, I mean, shit, Miami only needed a season, and we saw what they did in the playoffs. And there's talks about them potentially getting, somebody. I don't know what that somebody is, but somebody who's going to help them. And I think they have the type of team, and Boston has the type of team. Like, there are some teams who could piss these guys off already in the Eastern Conference. So it's just going to be very interesting, like, when all of this actually takes place.